So we are now welcomed by Don Tate. And Don is the author and illustrator of so many wonderful books. Strong as Sandow, how Eugene Sandow became the strongest man on earth. I love the art in Whoosh, Lonnie Johnson's Super Soaking Stream of Inventions. That was one of my favorites. You can see all of his books back there, and I think he has more than that too. And he is also the founding host of the blog, The Brown Bookshelf. So, Don, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, it's an honor to have you here. So thank you so very much. You are here to talk about your book, Pigskins to Paintbrushes. But we get to that, I want to ask you one question. You know, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but it's also the arts. And you were such an amazing artist. Have you always loved art? Why is it important to you? Why did you become an artist?
I can't think of a time when I wasn't an artist. When I visit elementary schools, I tell kids that, I think I must have been born with a pencil in my hand and my mom actually sent a picture to me. It's a picture that I drew of her and my little brother, and I was 3 years old when I drew it. But I'm not only an artist, I was just keeping my hands busy. So I was the type of kid who just liked to make toys from things that I could find around the house. An empty toilet paper tube would end up being a choo-choo train. I spent a lot of time macrame and braiding, and building, just keeping my hands busy. And so there was never a time when I didn't think that I would grow up to be some kind of an artist. When I was little, I didn't really think about becoming a children's book artist. And actually, when I was a kid, I thought that I would grow up to become a puppet maker like Jim Henson, because I loved making puppets like out of socks. So yes, art has always been a part of who I am.
Well, I can see why you were drawn to the story of Ernie Barnes, without a doubt. So in Pigskins and Paintbrushes, you tell the inspiring story of Ernie Barnes, um, uh, football player, artist, amazing. Why were you drawn to him? Why were you drawn to his story?
I think that with every character that I write about, I try to find some truth about that character that I can relate to. And when I was a kid, I was an artist. I wanted to be an artist, and I was not good at sports, just like Ernie Barnes. And Ernie Barnes was bullied for not being good at sports. And they called him names and they said bad things about him because the idea of an African American male, great big African American male who wanted to become an artist, they had names for guys like us. But he refused to be defined. While he did go out for football and he became a really good football player, art remained in his heart throughout, his entire football career. At the age of 27, he quit playing football and he started a very successful art career. And I also related to that because while I never considered myself to be a sports person, later in life, I became an athlete.
Mm.
Okay, I'm not out there on the basketball court or on the football court, but I love to go swimming. When I get done with this interview, I'm heading over to the YMCA and doing 60 laps. I like to walk and run and practice yoga. And I spend a lot of time working out in the gym. So eventually I defined myself as an athlete.
hmm Well, maybe I'll pass you in swimming there. You never know, right? Well, Don, you talk about the struggles that Ernie faced, and you mentioned them earlier. I mean, you talk about him not even being able to go into some art museums when he was young, right? And being restricted from that. And I'm curious, can you talk about those struggles he went through, being bullied, being treated differently because of the color of his skin?
Yeah, so during the Jim Crow days, African Americans weren't allowed to go into hotels or museums or in certain places, and I thought that that was important to include in the story. Oftentimes, people will ask me if certain things that I talk about in my stories are appropriate for young children. And I don't believe in sugarcoating history, so I included that in all of the story. I
Mhm.
think that stories like mine um, offer kids like a blueprint for navigating some of the struggles that they may already be facing. issues with civil rights and voting and the mistreatment of people of color, those aren't new things. They've been happening
Mhm,
for 400, for 200, the last 50 years. And
mhm.
so stories like this can show kids how other people have overcome great obstacles to make great contributions to the world.
100%. Don, you talk about how Ernie made it to the National Football League, but his real success came after football with art. Can you tell us a little bit how art became what we know him from?
Well, he went to college on a football scholarship, and and he wasn't a great football player, but he was a good football player. Um, but art always remained in his heart, so he stopped playing football and he stopped playing track for a while, and he just focused his time in the art studio and learning all of the techniques about art. Um, and actually, when he after he left college, he planned on starting an art career, but the American League was knocking at the door. He got a chance to play for the Baltimore Colts. He
Mhm,
thought that playing football would make him a rich man, and so he played 5 seasons in the football leagues. But
mhm,
again, art was never in his heart, and so
mhm.
he quit playing football and he painted what he loved, which was the images of the African American people in his community, and he called those paintings the beauty of the ghetto.
Mhm.
And one of those paintings went on to be shown during my favorite television show, Good Times.
Mhm.
In the 1970s, there weren't a
Mhm.
lot of television shows that featured people who looked like me, so I loved watching Good Times.
Mhm.
No matter what was going on in this family, JJ was always in the background painting pictures.
Mm.
And at the time, I thought that JJ was actually painting those pictures of beautiful, elongated, graceful African American people. And it wasn't until many years later that I learned that Ernie Barnes was the artist who painted those pictures. And Ernie Barnes inspired so many other illustrators like me to go into the arts. And so I thought he is someone who young people need to know about and familiarize themselves with his artwork.
It's interesting, Don, because I knew Ernie's name. I sort of had this vague conception of who he was. And in reading your book on one of the last pages, you have one of his artworks there. And I was like, I've seen that. I've seen that in the museum. And I was so excited because I recognized that I had, also been touched by his presence there as well, too. So Don, what advice do you have for our friends watching today if they want to be an artist, if they want to be an athlete, if they want to be anything they can imagine in this world? What advice do you have for them?
Just stick, be true to yourself. Okay, there are going to be people who try to define who you should be. I remember when um, right out of the college, I said I wanted to go into the arts, and my dad was like, "You're not going to be able to make an income as an artist." And my grandfather was like, "No, I think maybe you should go into business." And then one of my very first jobs, I had an employer tell me, "Well, you're lucky that I hired you because folks don't hire Black people in the arts." But I refused to be defined by others. Art was in my heart, and I've never done anything different. And I remember my grandpa, he lived be in his 90s. And he'd call me up here in Austin and he would say, Don, you're still working in the arts? And I'm like, yeah, Grandpa, I'm still an artist. And I have not gone one day as an unemployed artist. So always be true to who you are and don't let anyone define who you should be.
Well, Don, you do it beautifully. So thank you so very,
Thank
very
you so much.
much.